thoughts on this, or what do you think? And yeah, it's interactive. Let's do this. And that way, we're not sitting here for an hour and a half trying to get through this. By the time we're done, we go, oh, okay, we're done. And if we see that we need a break, by all means, throw it up and go, yeah, just a short one, or let's take it and then we can come back. All right? So any questions before we get started at all? All right. Does everybody know what we're here for today?
2 credits.
Yeah, the most important part, right? You're like, you can't trick us. I know what this is about. All right. Well, this is how we get there, is getting started, right? So what we're going to get started with, and I know I'm going to trip on this, all right? So have fun. Make sure you laugh heartily at it. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 2 cases. And they're Supreme Court cases, which, okay, wow, Supreme Court case is a big deal. What's interesting about these is there's Supreme Court cases that talk about DUI. Yeah, that misdemeanor crime DUI. How is it that the Supreme Court case ends up deciding cases on this? Well, we're going to talk about them because these were actually really important decisions. This one was decided in 2013, and then the next one we're going to talk about, which is a combination of 3 cases, was decided in 2016. All right, and they deal with some distinct legal concepts. For those of you that are in the criminal justice field, you're probably going to go, you know what, talk faster. I already know this. All right, for those of you that aren't, you might have a few questions, and if you have questions, blurt them out. Go, hey, that must be a legal term because I don't know what it is. Okay, and we'll go with that. All right. So in order for us to start here, what we want to know, obviously, are the facts of this case. So we'll kind of jam through these, but I think it's important to address them because then we understand how it all works together. So the facts of the McNeely case is just this. So we have a police officer, and he stops this gentleman and let me say one last thing. What perspective am I going to bring this to you? I just told you that I was a police officer 20 years, but I just told you that I work for the Federal Public Defender's Office now. So I'm defense now. All right. So here's what I promised my office. I said, question, go ahead. Do I have handouts? I actually can email it to you if you like it. If you want these, though, you can have those. All right. If anybody else wants them, we can make copies of these before you leave. If not, my idea was to send it digitally because I'm a firm believer in the environment. I don't want to kill trees. All right. So if anybody wants it, we'll send it. All you have to do is email, and we'll get it sent out. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Very good. All right, so before we begin, I want to preface it with, I will give this to you from a defense standpoint. However, if you want to know the police perspective, I'll give that to you too. All right? So you tell me what it is that you want. More importantly, I'm going to give it to you from a citizen standpoint to tell you what the police can and can't do, because I think that's what's most important. Okay? And I think it's what everybody should know. All right, so let's talk about the facts. So we've got the Missouri police, and they stopped this Mr. McNeely, and they stopped him for speeding and for repeatedly crossing the line at 2 o'clock in the morning. All right. So the officer notices what he calls signs of intoxication. Here we go. It's the laundry list, right? Red bloodshot, watery eyes. And for those in the legal field, here they go, right? We know these. Red bloodshot, watery eyes, slurred speech, smell of alcohol on his breath, disheveled clothes. I don't even have to look at it, right? And we know what the list is that's going to be said. All right. Unsteady gait upon exiting his truck, meaning, okay, he's wallowing as he gets out. He performs what the officer deems poorly on FSTs, is what they're called for short. We know that this field sobriety tests. It's those where you touch your nose and you have to walk a straight line. Try doing that without drinking, all right? Now, there's another test that I want you guys to know about called the horizontal gaze nystagmus, HGN, all right? And this is one where that officer puts that pen or that finger in front of you and they track it. You guys ever heard of that one or seen that one?
Yes.
All right, you want to know an interesting fact? I fail that test every time. You know the last drink that I had?
20 years ago.
Yeah, I'm more like 25, maybe even 30, way back in high school maybe, something like that. Haven't had a drink since. I fail it every time. Anybody know why?
Bad eyesight. Because it's his opinion of whether, again, he's not necessarily an expert to know whether you're actually following it or not.
All right, so the test is supposed to do, what it's supposed to do is track your eyes. And what it does is you look at the finger and your eyes are supposed to have what they call smooth pursuit, all the way from side to side. However, you have individuals like me, as when I track, I have a natural nystagmus. It'll bob just a little bit. It's a point every time it does it. I fail this test every time, and I don't drink. I don't use drugs either, just in case anybody's wondering. They're like, marijuana is legal. I'm like, yeah, no, not that either, okay? No, I have a natural gaze nystagmus. Some people do. They will fail this test naturally. All right. Now, there could be another question. Wait a minute. You don't walk the line straight, things of that nature. Well, we all know that. Anybody ever had an ear infection? Don't feel all that well? All right. What's your gait like? What's your balance like? It can be affected, correct? All right, so there are things that can explain this. So what the police do is they have other ways of measuring this, right? And one of the ways they do this is this thing right here called a PBT, all right, a portable breath test. And what it is, it's this little machine that they can carry with them and they have to blow into it. All right, here's another thing to know about. The PBT, in order for it to work effectively, needs to be calibrated, okay? And what we're trusting is that every time they use it. And what's important is we need to know that our officers that go out every day are diligent in calibrating their machines. Do you think that happens every day? Okay, important things to know, right? All right, so PBT needs to be calibrated the same way if someone's using a speed radar gun. The speed radar gun would need to be calibrated. It's literally a tuning fork that they use. You hit it against something, and then you point the gun at it, and it calibrates the speed gun. All right, and if it's not done every time, it may or may not be valid. All right, important things to know.
How can you prove it though? Excuse me. How can you prove it though?
Exactly.
If you get pulled over, how can you tell that, first of all, they so, no offense, I understand it's your ex, but they intimidate you, number one, so you pretty much quiet and you say, yes, sir, yes, sir. Second of all, if you were to be a smart aleck and say, well, did you calibrate the mask?
Absolutely. You hire me, okay? Because what's my job now? What is my job now? Federal public defender, right? Now you would have to qualify for the services from our office, which is what I remind our clients every day, right? But there are private defense attorneys out there that strictly do DUI defense. And these are the things that they know. And these are the things that they defend against. And one of the things you do when you get that officer out there is you ask them, did you calibrate? When did you calibrate? How did you do it? How do you remember that?
Does he tell me the truth?
So they have to tell us the truth because when we ask them the question, they're under oath and on the stand. And if we catch them lying, they have now perjured themselves.
How do you know he did it?
What's that?
How do you know that he or she did it?
How do we know that they did?
Yes.
The better question is, they have to prove that they did. Remember, the burden is on the state to prove that the person has violated the law.
Okay, how do they prove that they did?
That's up to them. They're going to have to produce logs. They're going to have to testify under oath that they in fact did it and hope that we don't have something that would completely contradict what they've done. Because here's what happens. If I get an officer on the stand, and I had this 3 weeks ago, who testifies to one thing, and then I produce evidence to show the contrary, they have now perjured themselves, and there's a couple problems with that. One is that officer can be charged, but more importantly, that officer will never be called upon to testify again. What good is an officer that cannot testify in court? None, right? And more than likely, they will be terminated. Okay, so there's a lot at stake for them. This is something that I understood when I worked there, but I'm not sure every officer understands it that works there. Is every time you take the stand, you not only put your reputation on the line, you put your career on the line as well. Okay? That's why there's no incentive to lying. If you get up there and you get caught, you're done. Go work someplace else, because if we can't believe you, you shouldn't be allowed to testify. All right? So I remind these officers when they take the stand, knowing all this. And the benefit for me is, obviously, I've done their job before. The scary part for them, too, is I wrote their policy when I was there. So not only did I teach, I wrote the policy. So when I get them on the stand, I ask them if they know their policy. And I ask them if they know what their policy means. And we walk through that whole process. So here's what I would caution folks, citizens, us citizens now, because I'm no longer part of that group, right? When you're out on the street, do not be confrontational. Don't point out their errors. Save them. Preserve them, remember them, and then when you're done there and we get to sit down and talk, tell me everything.
Great advice, thank you.
Okay? You tell me everything, and then when you tell me everything, now I know where to start. Okay? All right, any questions on that? All right, great questions. All right, so we know that he performs poorly on the test, so the officer starts to drive to the police station, right? Guess what McNeely does? He goes, yeah, you can drive me there, but I'm not going to blow into your breath machine. All right? So the officer takes him to a hospital for testing. All right? All right. So once they arrive at the hospital, the officer reads in this thing called implied consent. Anybody know what implied consent is? Ever heard of it before? It's funny because you're all subject to it. So when you got your license, did you guys all know that you automatically consented for them to take your breath or your blood as a condition of getting your license? Tell me who knew that. And notice my hand is down too, because how old were you when you got your license? 16, 17, most of us, right? Don't worry, you don't have to tell your age if it was older. I'm good with that. I know the room I'm with, all right? Yeah, I know, my wife would yell at me for that one, I get it. All right, when most of us obtained our driver's license, we had no idea. Wait a minute, you mean that you're gonna force me to do a breathalyzer, a needle in my arm to take my blood? Who knew this, right? That's what the state is arguing here. They're saying, hey, when you got your license, you agreed to this. I'm with you. No way, okay? So under implied consent, and here's the kicker. Under state law, if you refuse to submit to the test under implied consent, they can immediately revoke your driver's license for 1 year, and they get to use the fact that you would take it against you. See, because they wouldn't take it, he was drunk, or she was drunk. Anybody really uncomfortable with this? This is not the country we live in, right? There's a presumption of innocence. The state has the burden of proof, right? Isn't this flipping it on its head?
Yes.
All right, so the officer asked McNeely if he would consent to a blood test. What does Mr. McNeely say? It's like, you are not sticking a needle in my arm. And think about this. So one of the things I had a concern about when I was an officer, because I would rarely take blood unless I had consent, is there some sort of affliction that people can have that could make this deadly? Taking blood? Anybody know what it is?
Hemophilia?
Thank you. Absolutely. Hemophilia. You pierce their skin, they don't stop bleeding. Okay? And how do you know that the person's going to give you that information if they're inebriated to the point that they're being arrested for DUI? Do you see how this stuff all kind of folds into itself? There's a lot of complications here. All right. So he says no. Guess what happens? They take it anyway. Forcible blood draw. Okay? And this was done at 2:35 in the morning. And the lab results of this test show that he's over the legal limit. Now, let me tell you something real quick. And this goes back to your question before. I have so many clients that I meet with now, they go, you know what, I did it, I'm guilty, I'll just plead to it. And the first thing I tell them is, you need to take a deep breath, first of all. Time out, all right? You're that you believe that you have violated the law, and as a result, you deserve to be punished. But what you need to understand is there are rules the police and the government must follow if they seek your conviction. First and foremost, it's their burden to prove it. Second is they have to follow all the rules to secure your conviction. And if they don't do that, you don't deserve to be convicted for the crime you've been accused of. And I think once I explain that to people, they go, oh, okay, I understand. So I still plead guilty? I'm like, no, you plead not guilty today. And they're like, but I did it. I said, okay, deep breath again. Here we go. Round two. You're not guilty of the crime until the government proves that you are guilty. It is their burden to prove. So make sure you understand that. Even when you get stopped and you look at your speedometer and go, oh, I was speeding. Hey, we need to know the method by which the police determined that you were speeding. All right? The government has to provide that. So it's all important stuff to know. All right. So Mr. McNeely here, if the common person looks at this, goes, if he gets off on this case, then this isn't right because he did it. No. That's not the way to look at it. The government bears the burden to prove their case. If they can't prove it, if they can't show they did everything legally, then they don't get the conviction. Okay? All right, so here we go. So here's the question the court's asking. Here's the legal version of it. Does the natural metabolization of alcohol in the bloodstream create a per se exigency that justifies an exception to the Fourth Amendment warrant requirement for non-consensual blood testing in all drug driving cases? Huh? Clarifying breath, here we go. Does the fact that alcohol naturally dissipates, so naturally burns up in the blood, right? See, in every DUI case, DUI, driving under the influence, DWI, driving while intoxicated, same thing, okay? That allows officers to conduct warrantless blood draws. This is the better version because it's easier to understand, all right? This is someone got a JD and is using it, all right? So, all right. So here's what, all right, well, I already showed you the answer. What was it? And let's make sure we understand the question. Does the fact that we drink alcohol, whatever it is, wine, beer, yes, And it's different for every person, right?
Yes.
Like someone like me, I'll get half a beer probably at this point, and I'm done. All right, you guys would laugh at me. You'd be like, "That's the guy on the floor." All right, and there might be others out here that can throw down a 6-pack, and they're not even over the limit. Okay, everybody's body is different based on how it metabolizes. Okay, so the question being asked here is, does the fact that it's burning up in your bloodstream automatically give the police a right to go in and take a blood or a breath test? Good. You agree with the court then? The court says no. And the court says the natural dissipation of alcohol in the bloodstream does not create an emergency in every case sufficient to justify a non-consensual blood test. Therefore, and this is what's important, in a routine, and notice I stress the word routine, because if it's something that's got some weird factors to it, the police might be able to do it without a warrant. We're going to talk more about that in a second. But in a routine DUI, where there are no factors other than natural dissipation in the blood, then the police need to now get a search warrant. Okay. Now, what's interesting is this case came out in 2013. I don't think we had the dates on my retirement, but my retirement date was 2013. And it was July 2nd of 2013 is when I left. This opinion actually came out before that. One of the things I did before I left the police department is I put the class together for the traffic unit to be able to comply with the law, because I wanted them to make sure that they were doing it right. 8 months past retirement, I was still teaching over there because I'm not that smart. I was doing it for free because they still didn't have anybody, and I told them, you need to get somebody in. But it was to comply with this holding by the Supreme Court. Okay? So Metro, if they're not compliant, they know, which isn't that a good fact? If you guys ever need to come back and say, were they ever trained? And if it ever